Welcome to this explainer video about a really important new study out of South Africa, where researchers are looking at the inclusion of people with intellectual disabilities into competitive employment.
But what this research reveals is a pretty startling contradiction. It shows how the very institutions designed to protect vulnerable people can actually sometimes actively work against their inclusion in society. So think about this for a second. What happens when the systems that are literally designed to protect us become the very walls that trap us? It's a heavy question, right? But it sits at the absolute heart of the research we're diving into today. We're looking at a system meant to help people with intellectual disabilities build skills and find meaningful work, but which often ends up inadvertently keeping them totally segregated from the broader workforce. To get to the bottom of this, here's our roadmap. We'll look at the broken employment pathway, the paradox of protection, the supported employment solution, access, representation, and agency, and finally, fixing the system. Let's jump right into part one, the broken employment pathway. To really wrap our heads around the problem, we've got to understand the ultimate goal here, and that is competitive employment. Basically, this means getting individuals out of segregated, sheltered environments, which are often called protective workshops, and getting them into the open labor market. We're talking about real environments where they earn fair wages, get equal benefits, and work right alongside everyone else. But check out what actually happens. If you follow the flow here, you'll see a massive break right between level 3 and 4. Trainees get completely stuck at the work skills stage. Instead of bridging out to the open labor market like they're supposed to, they end up cycling right back into those protective workshops. And hey, this isn't just some abstract academic theory. Listen to this actual quote from a participant in the study. They said, "I'd done many jobs, they canceled my contract, and so they send me back here." You can just hear the deep frustration there. They get this temporary exposure, maybe working at an old age home or a school, only to have those contracts end, sending them right back to square one. The bridge is just completely broken. Paradox of protection. For the families involved, this whole cycle is just heartbreaking. As one carer painfully pointed out, families feel like their loved ones are just stagnating. I mean, some individuals spend literally decades in these facilities. They're trapped in this endless loop of preparation and skills training without ever actually advancing into a permanent role. They just repeat the same year over and over again. But here is the real kicker, the paradox. The very reason folks are kept in these workshops usually comes from a place of genuine love and valid safety concerns. Carers are worried about unsupportive public transport or the risk of workplace exploitation or a lack of mental health support on the job. But, ironically, these protective instincts inadvertently reinforce isolation. They keep people entirely out of the workforce. You can really see the clash in philosophies here. On one side, you've got the old, traditional mindset of protective workshops. Train, then place. That assumes you have to practice endlessly in a simulated bubble before you're quote-unquote ready. On the flip side, we have the modern, integrated philosophy we really need to move toward: place and train. This means you get the job first, and then you receive customized support right there on site. Supported employment solution. Supported employment, or SE for short, completely flips the script. It's based on this incredibly empowering idea that absolutely anyone can work, provided they're given the right type, intensity, and duration of personalized support. Usually this happens through a dedicated job coach. This person advocates for the individual, assesses their unique skills, and actually negotiates accommodations directly with employers. They act as that missing bridge, making sure both the employee and the employer are set up to succeed long-term. Now, the good news is that service providers in South Africa are trying so hard to make this work. They're out there using really progressive strategies, things like job shadowing, learnerships for real workplace exposure, and dedicated mentoring. But as the researchers point out, they are fighting a massive uphill battle against systemic limitations. So here's the catch. While all these local creative efforts are fantastic, they end up hitting a massive structural brick wall. It's a huge systemic mismatch. Individuals desperately want integrated jobs, but the system is currently only designed to provide temporary exposure, like short-term learnerships, without the sustained structural support actually needed to keep them employed. One service provider summed up this tragedy perfectly. They said, "A lot of them are very eager and capable. They just need the assistance. The barrier we're dealing with isn't a lack of capability or eagerness from the individuals. Not at all. The real barrier is a structural lack of supported opportunities out there in the open labor market. Let's look at part 4, access, representation, and agency. To really figure out how to fix things, the researchers point to this interlocking model from Mafayadi Motemle. It essentially argues that for marginalized groups, health and well-being can't just be about medical care or the absence of disease. Actually, health is this dynamic synthesis of 3 interlocking gears: access, representation, and agency. If even one of those gears stops turning, the entire system of a person's well-being just grinds to a halt. So what does true inclusion actually look like? Well, it means actively moving through these 3 steps. First step, access. And we're not just talking about a wheelchair ramp. We mean safe public transport and real access to job information. Next is representation, making sure people with intellectual disabilities and their families actually have a seat at the table when policies are being made. And finally, agency, giving individuals the power to make real autonomous choices about their own careers and lives. When you look at it through this lens, it clicks. Health and social inclusion are totally intertwined. Being shut out of the workforce isn't just an economic bummer. Chronic unemployment is a direct, fundamental threat to a person's physical and mental well-being. True health actually requires the redistribution of power and full social integration. Finally, part 5, fixing the system. The researchers didn't just drop this heavy problem in our laps and walk away. They gave us 4 highly coordinated, actionable strategies to totally shift the paradigm of vocational training in South Africa. Let's talk about how we can redefine what's already there. Step 1, don't just tear down those protective workshops, reimagine them. Instead of letting them be these segregated spaces where people stagnate, we can tap into their existing community connections and funding. We need to pivot them into dynamic, transitional support hubs where their single biggest metric of success is placing and supporting individuals out in the open labor market. But for any of this to actually stick, the open labor market itself has to change. We need inclusive policies and community interventions that directly involve people with intellectual disabilities and their families. By bringing them right into the research and policy process, we can start dismantling the ableism, that systemic discrimination that is just so deeply embedded in our current labor markets. So I'm going to leave you with this to chew on in your own life, your community, and your workplace. Look at the structures around you. Are they creating true, empowering inclusion, or are they just relying on a passive, segregating kind of protection? I really hope this explainer has inspired you to view workplace inclusion through a totally new structural lens. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and keep asking those tough questions.